Starting with, over here on my right, the legendary Mr. Guy Pratt.
Hi, I'm Guy Pratt and we are here at Madison Square Gardens where I'm playing with David Gilmour for 5 sold-out nights, and we're going to have a quick look at my rig. Right, so this is my, well, it's all my customs. It's not custom, but it's my signature. This is my Ashdown Interstellar 600, which is an amp I designed, something that Mark and I had talked about for years, which is sort of based on the old WEM stuff. But when I was playing with the Source for the Secrets, because we were doing very sort of psychedelic 60s stuff, we wanted the feel of the sort of equipment that Pink Floyd used to use back in the day. So this has kind of got the look of like an old Selmer treble and bass amp and a WEM PA. And it's, like I said, it's very, very classic. It's fabulous. It's very much like an ABM, but it's got a much hotter valve drive section on it, which is really great. So I've got that. And then these CL310s, which are kind of based on our WEM PA cabinets, but they're fantastic. It's a perfect size cab, 3 with nice little couple of tweeters in it. This just does the business for me and has done for a couple of years and will do for the foreseeable future. Okay, this is my gig rig pedal board. Again, this was built for the Saucers, and I had a lot to do. It's changed a lot, but I do use everything on it, except, perhaps unsurprisingly, the wah-wah pedal. There's not much call for it on this gig, but it's ended up being quite a lot of EQs more than anything, because I used a lot of basses on this gig, you'll see, so I've got various just EQs and level differences that need to be evened out. So yeah, it's a great fun board. What can I tell you? We've got 2 delays, nice old Echo Sex, Vox Gear, and the Boss Digital. Dimension C, because you know you can take the boy out of the 80s, but you can't take the 80s out of the boy. These are on Ashdown. In fact, I've got a friend who's a top mixer engineer who swears by these for everything, but I don't think they do them anymore. A TC sub, which is a very beautiful, very great sub signal, overdrive, because it's overdrive. And then of course my OC5, which I use on Sorrow, which is very much a kind of trademark sound. Obviously I prefer an OC2, but that's broken at the moment. And MXR Phase 90, because you can't have a board that's related to Pink Floyd in any way that doesn't have a Phase 90 on it. And the Cali 76, which is just a great compressor. And this little, nice little Ashdown pedal here, which is just for kicking my valve in and out. And there we are. Gooday family, Mark Gooday, the people behind Ashdown, made my amps my entire professional life. The first proper real pro gig I had, I mean, I'd had a few things before, but when I actually went off on tour for a band, it was this band Icehouse, that was in Australia in 1982. Part of my stipulation for that was that they would buy me a Trace Elliot amplifier. Trace Elliot were this brand new little company at the time, and you had to go out to a shop called Soundwave, which is out in Romford in Essex, which is a real schlep from London. And in fact, on Facebook a few years ago, Mark found the order book and it had this AH250 for Guy Pratt. And it was really sweet because that's the start of my relationship with him. So I was with him for years with Trace Elliot, and then I was off the road for a few years, just doing other things. And then, which is when he left and went, and so I wasn't really around when he set up Ashdown. But then as soon as I started playing again, he started making amps again, so it's basically that they're all I've ever known. What I love about Ashdown is, a lot of it is because I've always had this thing. I mean, it was more of an 80s thing, I guess, than now, but the difference between a bass and a guitar is I think with a guitar, you want to hear the amp. With the bass, you want to hear the bass. Again, I think that comes from being an 80s boy when everything was very, very hi-fi in terms of recording things. I mean, now I want to hear the amp, but I don't want the amp to colour everything too much. I want the amp to give it some power and to move some air and to round things out, you know. So, and Ashdown are very, very good for that. They're very transparent. Really, what I like is that you can be really dish-dash with your EQ, just like bit of that, and it's like, it's all fantastically responsive, you know. Because I'm not really an audiophile, I'm not great at all that stuff. I can't really talk a good game on the frequencies and everything anymore. So I guess then Ashdown works for me because it's just very punter friendly, if you like. You know, you plug it in, it's great. I mean, basically, I've had times where I've just plugged in and not done anything. It's You know, the ABM is kind of one of those things. It's a perfect head. It always has been. I love those things. It's it's a real kind of workhorse. You don't really need to do much with that. They used to make me personalised ones, where I had one which was just a different colour, and they sort of done some tweaking on the preamp stage, and that was just nice. So because it was nice, it was mine. But then for years we talked about this idea of doing something whammy. It kind of goes back to David Gilmour's 2006 tour, where because David still uses old Whem stuff as a joke, I think kind of Phil Taylor, David's tech, had taken the Ashdown logos off my cabinets and put Whem logos on, and it looked fantastic. And I think it was meant to be a little bit of a dig, but Mark loved it. You know, Mark and Dan, they really went for it. And he had this idea to let's do something whammy. So then they just started. They got some Whem cloth for my cabinets, and then we just talked about doing something that looked like a Whem. Because Whem are such great unsung heroes. I mean, my first ever amplifier was a Whem Dominator. You know, that's what I learnt the bass guitar on. So Whem's very special to me. And, you know, they invented on stage monitoring, they invented so much stuff. And Pink Floyd especially was all Whem early on. And the fact that David still plays Whem cabinets. So we just wanted to sort of, you know, pay homage to that. Also, it's just such lovely, timeless sort of design. Because everything looks like so sort of space sage, or kind of like bits of military hardware now. There's something really sort of sweet and reassuring about that kind of, you know, look. Basically, you know, and I think this was mainly Dan, you know, just worked on this design. Obviously, the amp is tweaked a bit. I mean, it's 600 watts rather than 9 or whatever. It's really nice. It's a perfect size. And it's basically simple like an ABM, but it's got a couple of things, like also as a nod to the sort of prog element of what I've been playing, there is an input for bass pedals at the back. You can play your Morg Taurus through it, which I actually was doing. And like I said, and it's got a much dirtier valve on it than the ABM has, and it sounds, you know, which is really great. A couple of songs on this that's really good for as well. Jazz bass edition. It's quite funny. First bass I ever had, which I still have, was a jazz, and I think there's something about whatever the first bass you pick up is. So obviously, the Betsy is my, you know, special favourite. And in fact, of course, you can buy replicas. The Bass Centre make the Betsy replica, which Bass Player magazine voted one of the top 10 basses of the 21st century. David will argue with me this for years. This is the funny thing. My main gigs are gigs that require precision, and I still don't get precisions really. I get them a lot more. I know it's not them. I know it's me. You know, it's the classic. It's not you. It's me. There's something about the neck. There's something about I just like the bite that you get from the bridge pickup, which to me is slightly missing in a precision. I love the sound of a precision in a band, but I think it's more on its own. You just can't beat the sound of a jazz. There's a very interesting thing we're doing on this. There's 2 songs on the Luck and Strange album where I play bass on it. And I think I played on my stack knob jazz, my 1960s stack knob, which was a wedding present from David, in fact. Well, I played bass on that. And then David did this sort of noodle bass track over the top, where he played a Hofner violin. And so we were trying to find a way. He said, obviously, you've got to play both parts live. And I couldn't just do the bass bits on the violin. It just didn't sound right. And you couldn't do the high bits on the Fender. So Bill Nash, who builds me a lot of wonderful, wonderful basses, I cannot praise him enough, gave me this beautiful, like a Telecaster bass. It's got the old Telecaster sort of old precision pickup, but it also has a jazz pickup in it. So I thought, hang on, maybe there's a way we can use this bass to be both a jazz and a Hofner violin for the high bits. So what we've done is it's got round wound strings, my usual round wound strings for the E and the A, and then the top 2 strings are flat wounds, and we've put a bit of foam under the bridge. So the bottom 2 are a Fender. The top 2 are like, and it really works. And it's really, really good fun. So I'd recommend that to anyone if you find yourself needing to be 2 basses. The one thing I would say to young musicians is revel in the fact that you have access to more music than anyone ever has, you know, and there's more stuff to learn from, more to play, more to kind of just delight in. And I would say that's the stuff to enjoy. And the one thing, and I said, you know, because I've got a son who's trying to do music, is the one thing is music really is just about playing. It's just about playing it and finding people to play it. You know, because it's the one or thing in your day-to-day life that can be transcendental.